or when I think about solitude, for me, it has a positive meaning, but I think it depends the meaning that you give to a word. No, for me, solitude, even the word itself is very poetic to me. And the interpretation that I give it to solitude is solitude meaning contemplation.
I agree. And I noticed that people confuse loneliness and solitude and they mix it up. And that loneliness has always this negative touch from it because it means you're being alone and you suffer from it. While solitude is at least neutral or even positive. And same in German with the terms Einsamkeit und Alleinsein.
But if you give a signifier for solitude as loneliness, yeah, then the meaning change. Then it becomes negative, the lack of company. And when you think in terms of lacking of, that's already extremely negative. To be single is the same. No? To be single, when you're single and you think single, the meaning of as lack of partner, that's a very, also again, a very negative connotation. But if you reinterpret it or find a positive meaning, you will realize that it is not the lack of, because there is never a lack of.
Yes, I am single, but that doesn't necessarily imply I'm looking for a relationship to end that state I'm in. Because I have to say, I came to the conclusion that it doesn't solve that very issue I'm addressing here. Like, it doesn't help me to project my loneliness on the presence of somebody else and think that solves the underlying problem, which is that I have to face my void anyways. And so at this point, I decided to relax and to not look for that and not to force anything and just see what happens and not consider it as something that I miss.
And I think our society also creates a lot of codependence, like, and I will say, like, in Western societies, it has a lot to do with the Christian church, and the idea that you are, particularly as a woman, you are because you have a husband and children. And if you don't function, if you don't function in that family cell, you are no one. When we think of solitude, direction, loneliness, we will think about capitalism, consumerism, and how lonely we are, only working and consuming and focusing on productivity. What we have is also the younger generations that are basically, with the shift of new technologies, I'm talking about internet and social media, there is this phenomena going on that I have been following, which is the meaning of the real and the hyper real, no? The hyper reality built through social media. Let's say Instagram is a fantastic example. No? When you have this hyper reality of the pictures of teenagers or young people, and they publish so many pictures of themselves being happy and with a lot of friends and successful. And then you have these kids of, I don't know, 15 years old or 21, God knows, that have like, I don't know, 3,000 or a million followers. That's a very interesting phenomenon going on there, because the funny thing is, when you go into the private of that type of super famous, non-lonely, successful people as hyper real, but when you go to the real as a person, you will see that many of these young people are struggling with deep depressions and with suicidal tendencies, you see? And for me, it's very painful to see which level have we reached today in our society. And with the pandemic, that went even worse, because we have to be disconnected from each other due to COVID, no? And that's, let's say, like the perspective of loneliness in the context of capitalism.
That's an interesting observation. And I think it's obvious how capitalism, with its individualism and disconnection of people and their forces, kind of provides more and more like solitary lifestyles. But then on the other hand, I also do think that in solitude, there is a certain freedom. Like there is maybe a way to escape from those forces of production and consumerism, that you can withdraw and be your own bubble somehow. Also, in the sense, like I did leaving the city, I'm not exactly Walden Thoreau in a shed in the woods, but still, this idea has some romantic impact on me to believe that if I'm far away from, the the big cities, there might be a chance to find a different way of living and thinking.
But as I was mentioning before, in my case, when I think of solitude as contemplation and I go direction Buddhism, that's a completely another trip. And I also will say I mix my interpretation, also mix Mexican shamanism and certain practices of spirituality. I try to work supporting younger people like myself, 20 years younger or something, trying to give them a better perspective on how to live a more happy life. So I handle kind of mental health. It's for me very, very important. And what I do is I work with art as a way to heal yourself, a way to liberate yourself, a way is also to understand capitalism. It's a very political. I am an activist in that terrain, also to help people get out of addiction, drugs, and things. So in this work, I have met young people that struggle a lot with loneliness, with the meaning of solitude as loneliness. And that implies struggling with addiction and struggling with feeling lonely, depressions, and disconnection. When someone tells you you are lonely, to me, that's not real. That's a construct. You are never alone. We are living in a universe or in a world that has thousands of organisms, also including human beings, no? But also micro and all sizes possible. And another thing is that everything is a network. We are interconnected. Even if you sit in a place, in an apartment alone, you are not alone, you are connected, But if your brain, and it's not only your brain, but if there is, let's say it like this, like a system, yeah, telling you that you are alone, and also maybe serious or the people you live with, it's a matter of which beliefs you choose. If you choose the negative becomes real because you're choosing that. But if you deconstruct things and find the best and most positive meaning for you, then believe me, it's revolutionary. And that's what I try to teach to people, because I have done all this alchemical work myself. I used to have deep depressions for years. I passed through addiction. I have, let's say, done the path myself. I'm not saying that I am a guru or that I have a cult. That's not what I am talking about, just to make it clear. I'm just saying I'm just let's say a middle-aged artist that has certain experiences and that I try to give something positive to the society.
Thanks. That sounds like an intense experience you've been going through. And yeah, like you did a lot of work. Can you maybe describe a bit more practical how that path would look like?
What I do is try to tell people, look, for me today, to be in solitude is fantastic. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I learned that I love to be alone, not alone in the term of lonely, alone in the sense of with myself, you know, with myself finding out who I am today, with myself listening to radio podcasts, with myself reading a book, with myself working on music and a project or something that makes me happy, you know. And this time is for me the time when I can connect with me and with everything around me as well. And that connection is extremely powerful and extremely sacred and very, very important, because when you can connect with yourself, and particularly if you can go to for a walk in the nature or something connected to nature, you start liberating yourself from what I call the matrix in the sense of a capitalist system. Yeah, when you unplug yourself from the system, from the machine, from productivity, and you go and talk to the tree or just sit down and listen to the water, the miracle starts, which means you start listening to yourself and you start having a mini break and you start rethinking who you are and you start thinking what I'm gonna do with my life today. Because in my case, I also struggle a lot with anxiety. And people believe, or certain corners of, for instance, Buddhism, also Mexican shamanism, they believe that depression is when you are struggling with the past. Anxiety, that's when you are anxious about the future, when you are scared about what is coming.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Depression as an effect of traumas from the past, and anxiety as the fear of the future.
And that's what I try to show to people when I teach music or workshop. What I share with them is the meaning of freedom. And the meaning of freedom is very, I take it in a very Buddhist term, which is contemplation. Also solitude as contemplation. That implies meditation, not to do nothing for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour if you can. Just do nothing, just perceive and contemplate. That is so liberating. I have been trying it myself since already 2 years, and it has gave me a lot.
But it's enough to just nothing else, no whatever, not a special mantra or this forced emptiness, because I'm a real thinker. Like, I have a hyperactive brain sometimes, and the more I tell it to stop, it produces new thoughts, unless I'm in nature and looking at water or something.
That's a good question, because there is not the right way to meditate, because each individual is very different. I have also a very hyperactive, I need, thinking all the time. In my case, and that's what I suggest, there are different things to do, different ways to meditate. And it's not about empty your mind. You cannot empty your mind. And that's what Buddha even said, it's not about emptying your mind. No, no, it's about letting your thoughts be. And just like a movie, you think this thing, let it pass. You think this other thing, let it pass. Just observe it. You can think as much as you want. I have had meditations in which I have been thinking what I'm gonna do later on, or oh my God, I'm hungry. And that's okay. That's totally, it's just do nothing during 5 minutes. Just stay strong, sit down, and let your thoughts pass as if they were a movie. But don't react, don't say nothing, and just perceive them. No, I'm just here and now doing what I am doing here and now. And this shift seems to be very simple, but it takes a while to understand it. And also, it takes a while to understand that solitude is not loneliness. Solitude can be a very beautiful thing. It is actually a gift that we need in order to create decent decent human connections. We need solitude in order to really enjoy company.